Have you ever wondered why we instantly gravitate to shows like Spy Family? You know, on the surface, they're very simple, but they're also able to elicit such an adoring, sometimes explosive response from the community. It's like an instant buy-in. Like, even me, I was just so hyped for it, and I don't know why. Are we just being fooled by some calculated formula or gimmick? If not, then what is it about that simplicity that makes it so charming? A huge part of that appeal, I think, can be explained by taking a look at Spy Family's premise, which I think it gets a ton of mileage out of. And what I describe Spy Family's premise as is a high concept. So before we can understand Spy Family's appeal, I think we first need to understand what a high concept is. High concept is basically a term used when pitching a show to describe an easy-to-grasp premise. They're concepts that can pretty much be encapsulated in just a sentence or two. A couple of extreme examples of this are films like Snakes on a Plane and Sharknado, which basically describe the whole premise of the film right in the title. It's right there on the tin. However, since most stories can be condensed down to a few lines if necessary, what really distinguishes a high concept is its ability to spark our imaginations. You hear it and can immediately picture the whole story in your mind, down to the poster. It just flows seamlessly. The possibilities excite you. They're essentially like what-if scenarios that can bring your mind to another world. Okay, I know that sounds like an isekai, but that's not what Basically, the associations inherent in the descriptions are so universal that your mind can easily paint a picture of it. A good example is a film like A Quiet Place, which focuses on the what if humans lived in a world where they were forced to be silent because any sound they make could mean their death. It's able to incite that curiosity in us without much need for setup in order to grasp it. We understand the stakes very clearly, and it captures the fear in that type of scenario on a visceral level, which makes it brilliant for horror. Now, let's apply high concept to anime. What well-known anime fit that criteria? Well, one of them is Death Note, which is basically what if someone got their hands on a book that had the power to kill anyone just by writing their name in it. Boom! Suddenly all the possibilities appear in your head. It's endless, all from such a simple and mundane task that we all get, writing in a notebook. But then what incites that curiosity is asking the question, what if those words we write had power for real-world consequences? And this is what made Death Note so easy to pick up. It was very accessible. Now, let me give you a more timely example of a high-concept anime, and that's arguably Chainsaw Man, which is airing this same fall 2022 season. It pretty much takes the concept of, what if a guy had the power to make chainsaws come out of his body and then use them to hunt devils? Okay, I may have oversimplified that, but that's pretty much the draw of what makes it appealing. It's so easy to understand and so metal that it's hard to not be curious how batshit insane it's gonna be. And spoiler, it is. Okay, now what about all the other anime that don't fit into that category? What are they? Well, in contrast to high concept, there is low concept, which is much more difficult to pitch because it tends to get most of the meat of its story from characters and relationships, which is much more complicated to succinctly boil down to a few lines and to get the full potential of it from only a bird's eye view. There's possibly history between the characters that needs to be explained, for example, and a lot of moving elements. A low concept for an anime is Nana. You can easily say Nana is an anime about music, but that doesn't fully capture what makes it so great. It's so much more than that. Now, I'm not going to go on and on about it because I previously did a video on it where I go into length about the core of where its appeal really lies, but basically it's all about relationships and understanding all of the different dynamics at play and the complexity of the characters' emotions or what makes it a standout experience. Unfortunately, that's not very easy to picture or to sell. This does not mean, however, that low concept is inferior or can't be successful. On the contrary, many Oscar-winning films are low concept because of the depth of their storytelling or the nuances they can capture of the human condition. And even many anime are also low concept. They just take a while to really get to the meat of what makes them so good. Now, where does Spy Family fit into all of this? Spy Family is a high concept, a very high one at that, with all of the built-in associations it has. A spy, an assassin, and a telepath, all crossed over into a traditional family unit. These are all familiar elements, and the combination has all the makings for a very wide appeal. And it's very easy to understand. A spy has to pretend to have a family, but what if he's not the only one in the family hiding its identity? That alone feels very enticing to see because of all the possibilities that it offers. However, a high concept alone does not make for a good show or even a successful one at that. That comes down to the execution. A high concept can get many people flocking through the door since it's able to cast such a wide net. But it needs to deliver on that premise with some form of substance or value that makes the experience worth watching, because if not, the novelty of the premise will end up just feeling like a gimmick. So how does Spy Family deliver? There's a few ways it does this, but the primary and most overt way is through its characters. Since they're the concept's main selling point, naturally they have been made to look exceptionally appealing in their own right. Alright, let's not mince words here. The designs of the two adult leads cater to both sides of the fan base. It's got waifu appeal,
Mommy, you're
and it's even got husbando appeal.
Daddy, Lloyd.
There is something here to enjoy for everyone, but in addition to that, they just bring that cool factor to roles that we traditionally don't associate with being exciting. Then it takes what we typically picture when it comes to a spy and assassin, and it subverts that by making them look completely helpless when trying to lead normal lives as parents. And then there's Anya, who's been maximized to look precious and innocent in almost every scene she's given. This helps her serve as the poster child mascot character that brings it all together both narratively and conceptually. Her comedic expressions are gold, with her smug and expressive faces, which help create some of the show's most memorable moments. Even though Lloyd is the protagonist, I'd argue that Anya has been made the star of the anime. She's a good, realistic depiction of a young child character in anime. She has that innocence that translates all of these things she hears from the adults around her through the lens of how an actual child would react to hearing them, whether it be taking it too literally or imagining something much bigger in their head. The whole dynamic of the family revolves around her success, which makes it really funny, because aside from her telepathy, she's just about average at everything else considering her actual age is 4. She tries to use her mind reading ability to her advantage, but many times it just backfires and just gets her in over her head. This leads me to the other way Spy Family successfully delivers on its premise, the engaging dynamic it sets up between the main characters. Operation Strix really just serves as an excuse to get these three unrelated characters together and keep them together under the motivation of their own secret missions. Anya wanting to help Lloyd succeed in order to stay a family, Lloyd wanting to succeed as a family in order to fulfill his mission, and Yor wanting to gain some normalcy in order to better hide her murderous profession. These motivations make them feel like their own fully defined characters that can operate independently from each other and are easy to identify apart from each other. These personalities and motivations are kept simple enough that their reactions to different situations can be easily understood and played up for comedic effect. This is able to create a fun push and pull between them when situations arise that don't particularly align with their own hidden agendas. In effect, what they lack in complexity is made up by the familiarity you get to feel with the characters. It sort of functions like a sitcom, with the characters having running gags and a similar set of behavior that you've come to expect from them each time. Changes to the status quo do happen, but it's over time, and they take a little longer to set in as the plot slowly builds over the course of the series. While Operation Strix is a serious mission, it's really going to take a long time to complete, and it's not always taken seriously, which reflects the overall lightheartedness of the show, and its primary focus, which is on building the bonds between the fake family members. This is part of what makes the show so accessible, because no matter what our beliefs are on family, the concept of building family, or even more broadly, the concept of finding somewhere we belong, is universally understood without too much explanation needed to be given. By choosing to keep it simple with its storytelling and not getting bogged down in exposition or world building, Spy Family is able to let its characters shine and get us invested in the story through them. However, the characters and premise alone can't solely do the work. They're able to generate the excitement to want us to experience the work, to get us to stick with it, but it's the memorable moments that the series is able to create, the emotions that it's able to instill in the viewer, that gives the work its value. And this is where the Spy Family anime differs from its manga counterpart, at least slightly. Its base appeal is similar, but its approach is different. Much of the criticism that I've seen aimed at Spy Family, which to be fair is from really just a vocal minority, has to do with wasting its premise due to the lack of plot progression, or the comedy just not being really funny if it's intended to be a gag anime. So I went ahead and read the equivalent chapters in the manga, and from what I observed, the pacing of the comedy in the manga is much more snappy, whereas in the anime it's more drawn out, which tends to make the funny moments not as impactful. And honestly, I actually don't have too many laugh out loud moments while watching the anime. I think it's amusing and it might induce a chuckle from time to time, but I essentially see the anime as more fun than funny. The intent of the anime adaptation seems to be more focused on the more wholesome and tender moments between the characters. These are characters that are at the top of their class skill-wise, so while the premise would suggest the potential for heavy action, the primary emphasis is on their family lives, which is something they haven't gotten to experience in their tumultuous and extraordinary lives. It's in the little details of who they were before this that adds to the whole picture. They seem oddly like robots at times because they don't know how to feel in these sort of situations that are completely foreign to them. Lloyd has been trained to detach himself from any notion of being close to people, Yor doesn't have any sense of what normalcy looks like, and Anya is used to being abandoned. She doesn't have a real sense of family. Even though they're a fake family, over time these characters will figure out what it means to be a real family. It'll just take the time to show them develop these bonds with each other. They can't open up to each other about their identities because they need to protect themselves, but maybe one day they'll be able to. And it's this long-term investment in seeing these characters develop gradually that makes the show feel so warm and inviting. It has the ability to brighten your day. This is why I keep coming back to it. While I personally don't think of it as a masterpiece, I definitely think it succeeds in being more than just a gimmick. High concepts are the concepts that sell because they're so easy to understand and are so simple that you can do so much with them in terms of marketing. Obviously, these types of concepts are the most popular in Hollywood and give way to many movies that are a bit soulless and just trying to cash in on a formula, but when done right, they can span much bigger worlds that inspire us to see the potential in what we can create. I'll give you an example. Recently, I finally got around to watching Jaws, which is an iconic movie that even though I'd never watched, I always knew about it because it was forever instilled in the public consciousness. While I wasn't super impressed by the movie itself, I was glad to have experienced it as a piece of film history. Being able to witness how effectively its ominous theme song was used throughout the movie was brilliant, especially because I had previously read that its director, Steven Spielberg, had gotten it created as a solution to being over budget and needing the shark to appear more menacing. And this is all from a high-concept blockbuster film. There's still value to be found there. When it comes to Spy Family, I'm obviously applying a Western lens and terminology to a Japanese property, so it might not completely fit, but I'd like to think that the appeal is universal enough to apply across cultures. I mean, it did. The point is that there is a formula, and it works, but what really makes it transcend is when the moments it provides feel genuine and earned. High concepts are valuable because they can cast such a large net and connect us so universally through a story. I think it's awesome to be able to recommend or connect with people from all different walks of life with one story that we all have in common. Even though our interests might be wildly different, that one point of intersection is enough to start a conversation and have a frame of reference, that one iconic thing that has that one cool factor we can all get on board with. I do need to make a distinction though. Just because something starts with a high concept doesn't mean it can't become more complex later, especially for a TV series. Breaking Bad is a great example of a high concept that progressively got more dark and complex as it went on. But back to Spy Family, even if you don't like it, it gives us something we can all comment on. We can have anime that we can more easily recommend to people and open the door for them or even for ourselves to discover that one particular thing that we do like and that we want to see more of, leading to other works that'll enrich our experience with the medium. This simplicity gives it the potential to be beloved by many, and while it won't have the depth that can bring it to that next level, it also doesn't always need it. Not everything has to be a masterpiece to be enjoyed. Not everyone is seeking the zenith of the medium at all times. Some of us just want to have a good time enjoying what we're watching.
よしボンド、次はアニメの監視だ。お前のルーツを教えてやる。
And that is okay.
Fuck. I think all this Spy Family propaganda is making me want to have a kid now. Shit.